Despite Tom's best efforts to end things with Susan, unfortunately, she decided that she was going to give last attempts to try to salvage this relationship with Tom Finley on October 25th. So first she goes to the Conso plant, and that's where she tells him that her stepfather had molested her as a child and that this was still going on, that she slept with his dad. And again, she tried later that day at the office and tried to take back his Auburn University sweatshirt to him. The reason that she says she was going to give his sweatshirt back to him is because she may not see him again, according to other later testimony. Realizing that none of this is working, Susan freaked out after Tom said, "You know what, just keep the sweatshirt. I'm done with our relationship. I don't want anything more from you." And this is what led ultimately to the decision that Susan Smith made that day to take two tiny, helpless, innocent lives from this world that depended on her as a mother. After Susan spoke with Tom that afternoon and he said that he wanted nothing more to do with her, this, of course, made Susan reportedly very distraught. Later that evening, she picked up the two boys, strapped them into their car seats, and said that she was going to go take a drive around. This resulted in, a few hours later, her running to a home close to John D. Long Lake, screaming for help and crying hysterically. She told the couple whose house that she had run to that an African American male had just carjacked her and taken her two sons, and she didn't know where they went, to please help her. So she said that the events that led up to this was that when she was driving around for those couple of hours, that she had stopped at a red light, and that he had jumped into her burgundy Mazda. He pulled out a gun, placed it to her ribs, and told her to drive. She claimed that she was able to get out of the vehicle after they drove around for a while, but that the man actually drove off with Alex and Michael in the back seat of the vehicle.
She ran to the nearest house, sobbing and crying for help. The family called 911.
Did he have any weapons, gun, anything?
He's got a gun.
Got a gun.
Yes, ma'am.
For 9 days after this occurrence, Susan and David both would go on multiple interviews begging for some sort of answers, for someone to let them know where their boys were. If they were safe, please bring them home. This is what they were doing for 9 days before Susan came out and admitted the truth.
To the man, me and my wife plead to him to please return our children to us safely and unharmed. We love our children very much, and we want them returned to us safe and all for them, and that they are being taken care of, and that they are safe, and that they will return home safely.
I want to say to my baby that your mama loves you so much, and your daddy and his whole family love you so much. And you guys have got to be strong, because you are, I just know, I just feel in my heart that you're okay.
After 9 days of lying to David, the police, and all of America, Susan finally broke down and admitted that she was not, in fact, carjacked, and that she herself drove her car down to John D. Long Lake with her boys strapped in the back seat, and allowed her two precious young boys, along with the vehicle, to sink to the bottom of the lake. Now, the issue with this confession is that Susan Smith seemed to wait to admit to killing the two young boys until her alibi and her story started to become unraveled. The police officers told her that they did not believe what she had told them about the red light and being carjacked due to the fact that the light on Mills Road, which is the red light she claimed to be sitting at when she got carjacked, the only way that that would turn red is if there was another vehicle that was coming from the opposite direction, i.e., giving witnesses. But there were never any witnesses that were at the crime that could corroborate that she was indeed carjacked. So he straight up told her, I don't believe you. This wouldn't have happened. So this is when things started to unravel for Susan. Now, another reason that the police officers did not quite believe Susan Smith and her story is that in the beginning of the investigation and looking for the boys, they actually took polygraph tests, both Susan and David. David passed his polygraph exam. Susan Smith's came back inconclusive.
They've told NBC that there were inconsistencies in your stories. Do you know what inconsistencies they were referring to?
No, ma'am, I really do not know that.
After Susan Smith, the story came out and she admitted that she had killed her 2 young sons, she actually wrote a letter stating the events that happened on October 25th of 1994. She wrote this letter on November 3rd after admitting the truth. This is the letter. When I left my home on Tuesday, October 25th, I was very emotionally distraught. I didn't want to live anymore. I felt like things couldn't get any worse. When I left home, I was going to ride around a little while and then go to my mom's. As I rode and rode and rode, I felt even more anxiety coming upon me and not wanting to live. I felt I couldn't be a good mom anymore, but I didn't want my children to grow up without a mom. I felt I had to end our lives to protect us from any grief or harm. I had never felt so lonely and so sad in my entire life. I was in love with someone very much, but he didn't love me and never would. I had a very difficult time accepting that, but I had hurt him very much, and I could see that he could never love me. When I was at John D. Long Lake, I had never felt so scared and unsure as I did then. I wanted to end my life so bad and was in my car ready to go down that ramp into the water. And I did go part way, but I stopped. I went again, and I stopped. I then got out of the car and stood by the car, a nervous wreck. Why was I feeling this way? Why was everything so bad in my life? I had no answers to these questions. I dropped to the lowest when I allowed my children to go down that ramp into the water without me. I took off running and screaming, oh God, no, what have I done? Why did you let this happen? I knew it was too late. I was an absolute mental case. I couldn't believe what I had done. I love my children with all of my heart. That will never change. I have prayed to them for forgiveness and hope that they will find it in their heart to forgive me. I never meant to hurt them. I am sorry for what has happened, and I know that I need some help. I don't think I will ever be able to forgive myself for what I have done. My children, Michael and Alex, are with our Heavenly Father now, and I know they will never be hurt again. As a mom, that means more than words could ever say. I knew from day one the truth would prevail, but I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. It was very tough emotionally to sit and watch my family hurt like they did. It was time to bring a peace of mind to everyone, including myself. My children deserve to have the best, and now they will. I broke down on Thursday, November 3rd, and told Sheriff Howard Wells the truth. It wasn't easy, but after the truth was out, I felt like the world was lifted off my shoulders. I know now that it's going to be a tough and long road ahead of me. At this very moment, I don't feel that I will be able to handle what's coming. But I have prayed to God that He will give me the strength to survive each day and to face these times and situations in my life that will be extremely painful. I have put my total faith in God, and He will take care of me. Susan V. Smith, 11/3/1994 at 5:05 p.m. A short time later, after Susan Smith's confession, police, divers, and searchers found her Mazda 122 feet from shore. Police officers and divers had actually already searched the lake. However, they did not go out far enough the first time that they searched the lake, so they didn't find the vehicle. Her red Mazda Protege was found upside down in the lake with the two boys still strapped inside of their car seats. One of the little boys was said to have had his little hand pressed against the window when they pulled the car from the lake. This was one of the eyewitness accounts from one of the divers. After Susan Smith was taken into custody, Sheriff Howard Wells announced in a press conference that she had been charged with 2 counts of murder.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with the deaths of her children, Michael 3 and Alexander 14 months. The vehicle, a 1990 Mazda, driven by Smith, was located late Thursday afternoon in Lake John D. Long near Union. 2 bodies were found in the vehicle's back seat. Identities are pending an autopsy.
The whole nation, of course, was in shock that a mother could do this to her only 2 children and that she could take the lives of her precious sons. And she did this, it looked like, for a man who didn't even want to be with her. So that was pretty crazy and had the whole country in uproar over that. There was, of course, a lot of tension as well in the Black communities due to the fact that Susan Smith had tried to blame the carjacking and the missing children on a Black African American male. So the nation was filled with outrage, disbelief, and anger towards Susan Smith at this time because of her lies, her deceit. She had been on multiple interviews begging for them to bring her sons home unharmed and for them to be okay. This, of course, ended up bringing even more media coverage to this case because of all the controversy behind it.
She needs a psychiatrist. She needs something worse than that. I've never heard anything like this. This is the worst way that Union County could ever be brought on the news. It hurts to know that somebody would do that to a young baby.
They're always accusing Black people of doing things that they do themselves.
Anytime you say Black man and white woman, it's all over. You know, I mean, that's my opinion. Anytime you say a Black man, that's it. And that's why a lot of us are single now. All of our men are locked up. Some of them are innocent.
She wouldn't have testified that she done it. They still would be looking for this suspect. And she could, have got away with it.
I feel like the reason that she did that was because it was an easy way.
Whenever Susan was tried, there were actually 2 cases at this time for her. The first was determining whether she was guilty or not guilty, and the second would be her sentencing if she was found guilty.
Qualifies as a death penalty case. Under South Carolina law, we have a number of aggravating circumstances that would allow it to be a death penalty case. But again, it's my policy to not just shoot from the hip until I've seen all the facts. I haven't read all the reports.
With his client, then Mr. Bruck, as I understand it, is waiving the bond hearing at this time. Based on the representations of counsel, then Ms. Smith will remain in the custody of law enforcement and remain in detention until there's further motions brought before this court.
During the first trial, it was set for July 17th of 1995. The state argued that Susan killed her sons due to heartbreak over Tom Finley. That she was distraught over this, which actually her letter corroborated this. And he even corroborated this on the stand, mentioning that when he saw her on October 25th of 1994, that she had seemed that way as well. After this, she decided to get rid of her 2 boys, not wanting them to be a problem in the relationship with Tom Finley. This is a big reason is why he didn't believe things would ever work with her, any more than a friendship, as we covered in the letter earlier. So this is what the state was arguing against Susan Smith, that she did this just because she had this relationship and this affair with a man who didn't want children. And that meanwhile, her side were stating, look, she didn't do this to get rid of her 2 boys just for a man. She was mentally unstable. She wasn't, thinking right. She was suicidal that night. She didn't want the boys to have to live without their mother. And that this was just a failed attempt on her own life. So you've got the 2 sides that are arguing. During the trial, there were many people that were called to testify against Susan. One of the people that were called to testify on Susan's behalf was actually Beverly Russell, which was her stepfather, who had sexually abused her for a good portion of her life. He even testified that they had been together even up to 2 months prior to the boys' deaths. He stated in court that he felt guilty that he played a part in Susan's mental instability, and that he feels like he's partially to blame for the pain that she was going through and the boys being gone. In fact, he read a letter which he had written Susan on Father's Day prior to court, which he had actually said he was utterly failing when it came to Susan needing the right kind of love. He also said to her, I want you to know that you do not have all the guilt in this tragedy. My heart breaks for what I've done to you. Had I known what the result of my sins would be, I would have mustered the strength to behave according to my responsibilities. Now, so you had Beverly Russell that was testifying on Susan's behalf. On the other side of things, you had David Smith, who was testifying against Susan and everything that had transpired within those days that the boys were missing and everything else leading up to it. In fact, one of the most powerful, moving things that happened in trial was they actually reenacted the car sinking to the bottom of John D. Long Lake. And this is what really got to the jurors. They said that it was entirely and eerily quiet within the courtroom while the video was being played. They actually filmed this from the perspective of the little boys and what they would have been seeing strapped in the back seat of the car. They actually timed this, and according to the reenactment, it would have taken 6 whole minutes for the car to sink. That's 6 minutes that she had to do something and to change her mind and to get her boys out of that car, call for help, anything, but she didn't. Now, jurors mentioned that this was incredibly impactful, and it was very eerie when they showed the video. Of course, like I mentioned, it was very quiet in the courtroom while everyone was sitting watching this video, and how long it took, and thinking how long the boys had to cry and scream for help and be in fear for their lives. This really, really, really got to the jury. And instead of her running from away screaming, oh God, what happened? Making up this story of events that happened, why didn't she run to the nearest home and say, call for help, my car is sinking, help my sons. They're in the car, help me. Instead of lying and making up this big, huge story about events that transpired that night that weren't true. But after going over all the details, more information and testimonies, and multiple parties in the verdict phase of the trial, it was concluded. On July 2nd of 1995, it only took 2.5 hours for jurors to decide that Susan Smith was indeed guilty of 2 counts of murder in the deaths of Alex and Michael Smith. After finding Susan Smith guilty for both of the boys, it was then time for the sentencing phase. Susan Smith was ultimately sentenced to life in prison, and is currently serving this life sentence in Lathe Correctional Institution in Greenwood, South Carolina. This life sentence allows Susan Smith to be up for parole in November of 2024 after only serving 30 years for the murder of her 2 sons. Since being convicted and sentenced to prison, Susan Smith has been in trouble for a few different things. She's actually gotten in trouble for sleeping with 2 different officers while she was incarcerated. The first one that came out was in the year 2000. This was an affair that she had with Houston Cagle. He was a guard who was at the facility where she was incarcerated. He was 50 years old at the time, and she was 28. He pled guilty, and he served 3 months in jail. The second affair to come out was actually the following year in 2001. This affair was with Captain Alfred Rowe, who was sentenced to 5 years probation. She's also been in trouble and has been reprimanded for drugs and self-harm. She's had at least 5 infractions between 2010 and 2019, and she's had medical treatment at least 6 times in the past few years, as well as, according to an article in People magazine back in October of 2019, despite these violations that Susan Smith is having while incarcerated, they are not affecting her release date. And they're stating that actually a former correctional officer in South Carolina stated that she'll be eligible for parole in 2024 still, regardless of the infractions that she's had while in prison. Now that we have discussed what happened on that tragic day, when Michael and Alex Smith were taken from this world much too soon and they lost their lives at the hand of their own mother, I wanted to kind of go over some thoughts of my own. But as always, make sure to do research yourself and base your own opinions on your own research that you find. So, of course, there's a ton of information out there on this case. There's a lot of interviews. There's, public records, news articles, and a lot of things. So, of course, like I mentioned before, make sure to do your own research in this. But I remember when this actually happened when I was a little girl, which drew me to this case in the first place of wanting to cover it. My perception on it has changed quite a bit from when I was younger and finding out about this case. It's a little bit, you can understand some more of the psychology behind things and what's going on, and what was going on with Susan Smith in her life. I truly think that she was mentally unstable. I think that she had a lot of mental health issues. I don't necessarily think that she should have been a mother in the first place, that she should have given those children up to somebody that truly wanted them and that wouldn't make the decision to base their lives on whether or not a man wanted children. But regardless, I don't understand why anyone, much less a mother, could ever take the lives of her children. It doesn't really matter the motive behind it, and what happened or why she did it. It's still unacceptable, and it's horrific, and it's disgusting. But, I do have a little bit of sympathy for Susan Smith and what she went through. I think that, losing, having her parents divorced at a young age, losing her father when she was 6 years old. She tried to commit suicide when she was 13. She obviously never got the help that she needed mentally to, fix her issues. And then, her stepfather molests her. There's so many things that have, gone on in this woman's life, and I feel bad for that. But nothing justifies taking the life of a child. Susan Smith claims that, her relationship ending with Tom Finley had nothing to do with her murdering the boys and killing her children, that it was just a failed suicide attempt, and that she doesn't know what was going through her head and why she killed her kids. She never really gave a thought behind that. My opinion, that's the only reason she did it. Susan Smith was mentally unstable. She'd had, her father left her life when she was 6 years old. She, saw her parents divorce. She had another man that she was supposed to trust that didn't take care of her. She got married, and then things didn't work out with him. There were always these affairs with other men, and being, it was just, There were a lot of issues there behind things, but I think ultimately Susan Smith wanted a relationship with Tom Finley, and he didn't want kids, and the only way that she saw out of that to have a relationship with him was to kill her sons, come up with some crazy ass story saying that, oh yeah, it was somebody that took my car, took my boys, and I just pray that they're coming home. No, you did it, and you're sick. It sounds like a lot of the things between her mental instability, the relationships, her life was all in shambles. And with things not working out with anybody that she'd ever been in a relationship with, I think these were things that just sent her over the edge. And it's just, I think maybe too, she had feelings of remorse that she couldn't make things work out with her son's father as well, with David. I honestly think that Susan Smith thought that life without the boys would be much easier. It wouldn't be as complicated. She wouldn't have failed marriages and, being a single mother and trying to find somebody to love her despite all of this. Or maybe she thought she couldn't be the mother that the boys needed anymore. But why in that case were her last actions as a mother to kill her two boys? Why not take the boys to her mom's house like she claimed that she was going out for a drive and was going to stop by her mother's house? Why didn't she take the boys to her mom and say, look, Mom, I'm having trouble? She'd been known to talk to her mom about problems before. Why couldn't she have said, I'm having issues, I'm very depressed, I'm thinking of ending it, and I don't want the boys to be in that situation? Why couldn't she have, had somebody watch them for her instead of putting them in harm's way? Why not just tell anyone that she needed some help? It's just crazy. It's crazy to me that, someone could find it that her only choice was to kill her two sons. It's ridiculous. I can't fathom it, and I don't think many of us can. I honestly think that what she did that night was despicable and sick, and that she deserves to spend the rest of her life in prison. I don't think there's any excuse for what she did. It doesn't matter. The fact is, she did it. And then she lied about it for 9 days, wasting resources and blaming innocent people for her dirty work. It's just baffling to me that a mother could do this to her children instead of doing what was needed and getting them to a safe place and keeping them from harm's way. But, much like the rest of the world, we may never know what truly was going on in her mind that day, that she thought the only way to deal with it was the most heartbreaking and tragic way to take the lives of two innocent boys. Anyways, guys, I hope that going over this case maybe illuminated some new things for you guys, some new information. As always, make sure to research on your own. Take a look at, some of the evidence, the stuff that was presented in court, interviews, etc. It's all out there for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think that Tom Finley was the reason that Susan did this? Do you think it was some of the mental anguish that she was going through? Do you think it was a combination? What do you think? Do you think that she planned doing this to them to get rid of them and to not have to deal with having children? What are your thoughts? Oh, before I go, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that you're notified every time that I upload a new video. And until next time, my mystery lovers, bye.